morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to be taking a little bit of a look at the 10 worst level X's that we've ever had. Though we do need to take this with a massive pinch of salt. You see, the level X's were generally pretty gosh darn good. Now, I did do a list of the top 10 level X's, I'll link that in the description. For those that may have forgotten, level X's were the chase card in the Diamond and Pearl era, and you essentially leveled up, like evolving, but you kept the previous attacks, etc., when you were in the active, and you could only do it when you were in the active, and it essentially was not a million miles away from break Pokemon later on, but bigger, more impressive, and had to be done when they were in the active. Now, there are a few. I did do a poll over on the Facebook group over on Burbank City Gym, and there were a couple that did get some votes that are just not going on the list. Take Floatzel level X, for instance. Love Floatzel. The Pokebody says that when one of your water Pokemon is KO'd, you just put that Pokemon and all cards attached to it from your discard pile into your hand. Great tech in Gyarados stacks. Not to mention that for 2 water energy, you could show your opponent as many energy cards as you like from your hand, deal 20 for each card you show them, and then shuffle the rest of them into your deck. Not a metagame defining card, but certainly had its use in a whole bunch of decks. Similarly, Torterra was not exactly some kind of game-breaking card, but Torterra had a really nice poker power, whereby if you had more prizes left than your opponent, i.e. you were losing the game, you could just switch your opponent's bench with their active. That's pretty gosh darned awesome. 4 energy, 100 damage, 30 to one of your opponent's bench, 30 to yourself. Not amazing, but a free gusting effect is pretty gosh darn nice. Tangrowth was one that I tried using a lot. I made so many decks with Tangrowth. So many decks. The poker power, once during a turn, you may flip a coin, and if heads, remove 4 damage counters from one of your Pokemon. And then 1 grass energy, let you search for as many grass energy as you like, and attach them to your Pokemon in any way that you like. Again, we're not talking an absolute game-breaking card, but really good in like a billion different grass decks, so absolutely not going on this list. Cresselia was another one that a lot of people seem to be underrating. Cresselia was a really nice tech in a bunch of decks. Now, the attack was pretty nice. 3 energy, 40 damage, and if you take a KO, take an extra prize. Remember, weakness wasn't all times 2 then, so you would actually still be 10 damage short of a Uxie. Sorry about that. But it was still a nice little bonus. The main reason I saw most people playing it, however, was for the Pokemon power Full Moon Dance. Once during your turn, before you attack, you may move 1 damage counter from either player's Pokemon to another Pokemon. Not all the time, you could do some other cheeky little things, but most of the time it was using a damage counter from your Pokemon to your opponent's. That's a good thing, ladies and gentlemen. That is a very, very good thing. And finally, Rhyperior. Now, a lot of people seem to remember Rhyperior as this absolute powerhouse, how could you possibly say it was bad, mega deck. Let's hold off on that a little bit. Now, being a level X of a stage 2 meant you had to go all the way up to a stage 2 and then level up, which was awkward. But it had an attack for 0 energy that let you discard the top 5 cards of your deck and do 50 damage for each energy card you discarded. So in theory, you could just pile your deck full of energy and do huge damage. Don't worry about the second attack. The second attack was not good. However, for 0 energy, what you would actually do is you would use Mew Prime. You see, what was so good about Mew Prime was that if you got a Pokemon in the Lost Zone, we had a bunch of ways to do it, you would then be able to copy the attacks of any Pokemon in the Lost Zone. So now what you would do is you would try and make sure that you got Rhyperior in the Lost Zone, at which point you would be able to copy its attack for no energy without having to get a stage 2 and then muck about leveling it up, which made it a very, very tidy option. Mewperia was not some kind of all-encompassing, crushing powerhouse tier 1 deck, but it was a very nice deck that saw a fringe amount of play and a fringe amount of success and could be seen flirting with the top tables at a bunch of tournaments. But it wasn't some powerhouse tier 1 deck. Still, Rhyperior deserves to be nowhere near this list. A couple that I'm not putting on the list, you could argue they're too good, you could argue they're my two favourite Gen 1 Pokemon, you go nuts and you come down wherever you like there, but Porygon-Z. Or the Porygon-Z, in my defence, was a great card. It actually had 2 Poké Powers, don't see that very often. Mode Crash, when you put Porygon-Z Lv.X from your hand onto your active Porygon-Z, you may discard all of your opponent's special energy cards in play. Yeah, you're literally getting rid of all of your opponent's special energy in one go. Try arguing that that's not good. I suppose if you're really not playing against a deck with any special energy, but come on. Most people were. The second Poké Power was Decode. Once during your turn, you may search for any 2 cards and put them on top of your deck. Yeah, that was actually really good, ladies and gentlemen. That was really good. And then Snorlax Lv.X. I adore Snorlax. The Poké Power said if he's your active Pokemon, you can draw until you got 6 cards in hand and put him to sleep. And for 4 energy, 80 damage, discarding as many energy cards as you like from your hand, healing that many from Snorlax. I always loved the idea of Snorlax as a draw engine, but it never really seemed to work, at least in the way that I was hoping it would, which is a little bit sad. So going into the list proper, in at number 10, we've got Raichu Lv.X. Now, I'll be honest with you, right? Raichu Lv.X, it's not an offensively bad card. A lot of the lower part of this list really isn't going to look that terrible. But it's the worst, not necessarily that they're all terrible. Now, the Pokebodies actually sounds amazing. Once during your turn, when you level up Raichu and use Voltage Shoot, you may use another attack afterwards. So you basically get to attack twice. And for that reason alone, a lot of people tried playing it, though it rarely ever really worked. Now, the Voltage Shoot attack was free energy, discard 2 energy from your hand, and do 80 to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Bearing in mind that would take down a Uxie or a Claydol on the bench, and everyone at the time was playing Uxie and Claydol. And then you would use another attack. The problem was it was free energy and discard 2 from your hand, and then we never really had a great partner. Now, it was interesting because Raichu Lv.X was one of the very, very cool Pokemon that was legal at the same time as its Prime. So you could actually get Raichu Prime out and then Lv.X it. And it had a Poké Power that let you move as much lightning energy attached to your other Pokemon to Raichu as you like, and an attack for free lightning energy that did 120 and discarded all energy. But by the time you've finished all of this, you've discarded 2 energy from your hand, got free energy on Raichu and discarded them all, and you've done 80 to the bench and 120. You might have got a couple of prizes, but you've completely run out of steam. In at number 9, we've got Heatran. Now, Heatran is another one that comes in with 2 Pokebodies. Heavy Metal says that your opponent cannot remove burn by evolving or devolving. And when they flip a coin for burn, they treat it as tails. Basically, any Pokemon that stays in the active cannot get out of burn. If they evolve or devolve, they're still burned. If they try and flip a coin for burn, they'll just stay burned. And the second Poké Power here basically said that if Heatran's on your bench, you may, if one of your Pokemon discarded basic energy attached to their fire or metal active to attack, you could attach up to 2 of those energy back. So it was nice for recovering energy. Again, Heatran saw a bunch of play and people really liked to try and use it, but it just never ended up being good enough. In at number 8, Electivire. Now, Electivire's Poké Power actually sounds quite nice. Or Pokebody as it was. Pokebodies were passive, always there. Poké Powers were active, you had to use them. As long as Electivire is your active Pokemon, whenever your opponent attaches an energy card from his or her hand to one of his or her Pokemon, you put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. So it was a nice little tech for taking stuff out. It was alright. But then 2 energy, 50 damage, discard all your opponent's tools and stadiums, and then you're invincible next turn. Which sounds really good, but if they don't have any tools or stadiums in play, you just do 50 damage. There was nothing offensively bad about Electivire Lv.X, it just never ended up being good enough. It was just a little bit underwhelming and never worked as well as we might like. In at number 7, Salamence Lv.X. Now the Poké Power Double Fall sounds amazing, but it's not good enough. Once during your turn, when you put Salamence Lv.X from your hand onto your active Salamence, you get to, for that turn, take an extra prize if you take a KO. So for one turn only, you get to take an extra prize if you take a KO. Now, firstly, it's a Lv.X of a level 2, which is awkward. Secondly, the Poké Power only works for one turn, which is awkward. And thirdly, 4 energy, 100 damage, discard an energy, bearing in mind it had to include a fire and a water. And this was a Pokemon that looked good and had potential, but it was just way, way too awkward to ever actually get rolling. In at number 6, we've got Drapion Lv.X. Now, the Poké Power here was really quite good. Once during your turn, you may flip a coin. If heads, choose one of the defending Pokemon. They're poisoned, and you put 3 damage counters on that Pokemon instead of 1 between turns. Cool. It's flippy, but treble poison off a Poké Power sounds pretty good to me. The problem is the attack was terrible. 4 energy, 40 damage to the active, 40 to one of your opponent's bench. Now it does stop the defending Pokemon retreating, which does combo very nicely here with the ability that's poisoning your opponent, but it's far, far too expensive. Almost offensively expensive. Sorry. In at number 5, we've got WUPPOWDON. And WUPPOWDON again, it's too awkward. Now, I do adore the Poké Power here. Sandra set once during your game, so it's a once per game ability. Each player shuffles all cards in play other than Pokemon supporter cards into his or her deck. And then there's a reminder that you cannot use it more than once per game. But it literally says once during a game, so we really don't need to worry about that. Not even a little bit. And this was good for a little bit of disruption. Bears reminding at this stage that at the time, supporter cards did not get discarded when they were played. You would put them next to your active Pokemon like they were actually standing there cheering on or, supporting your active Pokemon. It was nice and it could really hurt your opponent, but it could also hurt you, and it was once per game and it was interesting, but rarely game-breaking. 2 fighting, 2 colourless energy, and you discard the 2 fighting. 40 damage to each of 2 of your opponent's bench. Yeah, that's not good enough. 4 energy discarding 2 to do 40 to 2 bench Pokemon. No. No. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Not loving it. Not buying it. In at number 4, Electivire FB. And commiserations to Electivire here for having 2 cards that were level X's and both of them being on the list. Now, the Poké Power Energy Recycle sounds really good. Once during your turn, you may search your discard pile for up to 3 energy cards and attach them to your Pokemon in any way that you like. But it ends your turn. And remember, this is a level X, so you're not using this turn 1. And you could really compare this to Zacian's ability nowadays. Zacian's ability is amazing. Draw 3 cards, and if any of them are Metal Energy, attach them to Zacian. But generally speaking, what you really want to do here is use this turn 1. That's what Zacian wants to do. I'm not saying you don't use it turn 1 for Zacian, but I am saying very clearly that it's way better on turn 1 when you can not attack anyway, and you can get rolling and then start hitting 220 a turn after that. I am just not anywhere near as fond of this if it's not on a basic Pokemon. The attack, 3 energy, 30 damage, plus 10 more for each energy attached to all of your Pokemon can be good, if you can get enough energy on all of your Pokemon, but it's not great, and I really didn't see much of this around. And to be fair, Electivire FB, from which you level X'd, sucked. Like, really sucked. Now, I do think the top 3 are the top 3, and I do think it's not that close. In at number 3, we've got Rayquaza C Lv.X. Now, this is another one of those SP Pokemon like we just saw with Electivire. That is to say that they are owners Pokemon. They are all basics, I mean Rayquaza would be anyway, and they get lots of extra tricks, and they do get extra tricks. Energy gain to reduce the amount of energy you've got to actually pay in order to attack, for instance, was pretty gosh darn good. But even that didn't save Rayquaza. If it's your active Pokemon and is damaged but not KO'd by an attack, you got to search your discard pile for an energy and attach it to Rayquaza. Sounds kinda good, right? And you can do 200 damage, which is huge. What's the downside? Water, Psychic, Fire, Colorless, 200 damage. Even with energy gain, it sucks. Oh, and if you've got any cards in your hand, you have to discard all energy attached to Rayquaza to use the attack. I tried making this deck. I'm sure a lot of people tried making this deck. Just wasn't good enough. There's nothing bad about it in terms of the amount of damage it's doing, and the Pokebody is great, but when you cannot even remotely pay it with energy gain, something's gone very, very wrong. In at number 2, Dialga Lv.X. Now, to be fair, this always seems a little bit worse in hindsight, because Dialga G Lv.X was over the top. One of the very, very best ones we had. Made its way high up into the top 10 list. So Dialga Lv.X really cannot compare. The attack 4 energy, 80, can't use it next turn is fine, not terrible, not stunning, fine. But really here it was the fact that the poker power was way too risky. To the point where you almost couldn't use it, which means you're just down to the attack, which isn't great. Once during your turn, you may have your opponent flip 2 coins. If both of them are heads, your turn ends. If both of them are tails, then your opponent's turn consists of drawing a card, and then their turn ends and it's yours. You can have every turn in a row with this, and as a ridiculous Hail Mary, cool. But it's so risky. Crazy risky. Maybe this doesn't quite deserve to be so high on the list, and maybe I'm dinging it because Dialga G was so good. But this is another one of those that I did try using, but the fact of the matter is 50% of the time the ability does nothing, 25% of the time it's amazing, and 25% of the time it's absolutely terrible. And the attack is a bit meh. But in at number 1, it's Charizard G Lv.X, and I feel pretty good about this. This card sucked. It was a tin promo, the art was amazing, it was Charizard, everybody loved it. This card sucked. As often as you like during your turn, you may move an energy attached to one of your Pokemon to Charizard G, which sounds really good, but this is another one of those SP Pokemon. And we didn't need another way to move energy, we had Bronzong G. Oh yeah, okay. I suppose in a mixed SP, non-SP deck, Bronzong wouldn't be as good as Charizard. But nobody played, well, I suppose occasionally a little bit, but it was quite rare to see a proper mix, and certainly you just didn't see Charizard G Lv.X played with a bunch of non-SP Pokemon. And then the attack, 5 energy, 150 sounds good. Well, the 150 sounds good, the 5 energy doesn't. But you got a 50% chance, you flip a coin, and if tails, you discard all energy attached to Charizard. I can't get behind this, ladies and gentlemen. I just can't get behind it. I don't think it's particularly good. I don't think it's particularly inspiring. And I find it very, very difficult to look at this with much more than just contempt. It wasn't a good card. It just wasn't. And in a world where we've got SP Pokemon like Luxray and Garchomp, it's really quite difficult, even bearing in mind it's an SP Pokemon with all of those brilliant SP tricks, it's really hard for me to remotely tell you that Charizard was a good card. I do feel pretty good about the top 3 outside of that. Like I told you about at the beginning of the video, Lv.X's as a whole were good. Way better than a lot of the other types of cards we've had in the past. I do think these are the worst 10. I do stand by that. But the fact of the matter is that even the ones on the bottom of this list saw a fair amount of play. They weren't amazing, but they saw a bit of play. So there we go. That's what I think, ladies and gentlemen. That's my bottom 10, top 10, call it what you will. But I would very much like to know what you think of this road. So let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, or you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where you can find out about a whole bunch of games that don't have Pokemon in, but are pretty gosh darned awesome nonetheless. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Also, right, if you're dropping a card, you've got to put a card up in its place. You can't just tell me cards don't belong on the list. Give me one to put on instead. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.